Elevate TV, advancing kingdom lifestyle.
Good evening, maybe good morning. You might be watching this show in the morning. Welcome to another episode of the Gigi Report. I'm your host, Godfrey Gishilke, and I'm very happy that you've joined us once again this wonderful show. I am so excited to have you here. And please, before we even go further, if you're watching and following this conversation from the social media platforms, remember to share. We are live on Elevate TV Kenya, Facebook page, and YouTube channels. So please share your views. And this is going to be an amazing conversation. I'm joined in this particular episode by a very special guest. All my guests are special, just to emphasize that. And I'm looking forward to an amazing conversation with SHARON SLATER, and I'll be telling you more about her. And so, welcome. Before we go into the conversation, let me just lay out the background to this conversation, and then after that, I'm going to introduce my guests briefly, and then I'll ask her to tell us a little bit more, because there are certainly some details I'll miss out. So once again, get yourself set. Let's have this amazing conversation. We are talking about promoting and protecting family values, how to fight against the destruction of the family, and we'll go into the details about what that means. Now, founded in the United States in 1999, Family Watch International is a non-profit international education organization in consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. My guest, SHARON SLATER, has become the proverbial unicorn of the conservative movements fighting to preserve family values against all the powerful liberal leftist woke gender advocates whose agenda is to the utter destruction and redefinition of the family as we know it. So SHARON was a guest at the just concluded Pan-African Conference on Family Values here in Nairobi, a conference I had the pleasure to attend, and I'm very, very happy that we have somehow squeezed some time from our very busy schedule to bring her on the studios and record this show. So welcome, sit there and follow. And as always, the Gigi Report is a platform for big, bold, and honest conversation on a broad range of subject matters: social, cultural, economic, political, legal, philosophical, and theological themes. Today we're going to be talking about global issues, social, cultural issues, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy this conversation. So, SHARON, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Let me just say what I think I know about you before you dive in. My guest, SHARON SLATER, is the president of Family Watch International, which I just mentioned, an organization that advocates for conservative family values. And that is a very important point, conservative family values. And our organization has consultative status with this particular UN body called Economic and Social Council of the UN. So SHARON sits also as chairs the UN Family Rights Caucus. You're going to be telling us more about that and how we other women, Christian women, can join in the caucus. And SHARON is also actually a consultant for multiple UN member states in Africa, and IOC, Islamic Organization, I think, Council, something like that. That is countries, among the Islamic countries, they have a political organization. And so she's their consultant on human sexuality and family policy issues. And so if you want more details about SHARON's work, you can go to the www.familywatch.org.org. That's where you'll find details about our organization. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I'm very happy to have you here. It's a pleasure. And I know, it's quite tough to navigate, extract you from the various meetings. But yes, here you are. So let's begin by you telling us about yourself and how did you get to where you are today?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that opportunity to share. Well, personally, I am a mother and a grandmother. I have 7 children.
Wonderful.
And 20 grandchildren. And 3 of our children we adopted from Mozambique, and they were orphans. Their siblings are grown now, and 2 of them have given me some of those grandchildren. So my family is part African, and I feel like we have a vested interest in what happens in Africa, because sometimes they even live in the Congo. My daughter married a man from the DRC, Samuel Kabwika, and they work there, and I have a great interest. You asked me, how did I get involved in this work, right? So it just so happened that I got invited after I'd put my first child into school. My last child went to school, and I had a little more time, and I said a prayer, and I asked God what he would have me do. And that prayer somehow led me to the United Nations. I knew very little about it, and I was thrown into a room, and I was told to monitor what was happening on any family issues. And I was sitting there listening when a lone delegate raised her hand and said, I think we should put in a provision in here on the protection of religious and cultural values. Well, you would have thought she dropped a bomb in the room. Everybody erupted like she'd said the most controversial thing. And I was thinking, that's so normal. What is going on here? And then I started shaking because I was very nervous. They were asking her for citations to show that this was in past UN documents. And I had been given a document that I'd left in the corner of the room. And the night before I was studying it, and it had the very citations she needed on citations for religious and cultural values. So I snuck over in the corner of the room. I got it and I twisted it over to the right page, and I had actually starred the reference the night before. Got behind her and I stuck it on her lap. So she was arguing the point with all these diplomats. Then she looked down, she saw she had the citations, she read them off, and the room went silent, and she won the argument.
Wow.
Yeah. So she asked for a break, and she pulled me out in the hallway, and she said, who are you? Who was I? I was a mom.
All right.
But I was a mom that happened to be at the right time, at the right place, with the right tool that could help affect the international negotiations on respect for religious and cultural values.
Right.
And that astounded me. That changed my life. I thought if it could be that easy, what if I learned more? What if I started analyzing the documents? What if I brought experts in? What if I brought in attorneys and experts when they talk about all these different issues? And that began our journey to found Family Watch International.
Wow.
And we found that the diplomats were listening to us. And I saw there was a battle over the family, an international battle. The family was like the most controversial word when you proposed it. And as I learned along this journey, it was not only a battle over family, it's a battle for the hearts and minds of the children through the policies that they were making. Well, in the meantime, there was a conference in South Africa in 2002. And I went there, but I first went to Mozambique because we had started a program that we were monitoring. It was called a Stay Alive program, an HIV/AIDS abstinence-based program. I went to go for Africa for the first time. We went to an orphanage there, and there were 3 children. And I had the strongest thought that we were supposed to adopt these 3 children. They were little. They were 3, 9, and 11 at the time, Afonso, Luis, and Amelia. And that led me on a journey with my husband to adopt them that took 7 years.
Okay.
So that's when I started going back and forth to Africa. And that's when my daughter Amelia, when I was there trying to adopt her, she was 9 at the time, she came home with a booklet in her little backpack from school. And the booklet was so graphic. It had pictures of how to have sex in different ways, and under the guise of providing protection and teaching her how to protect herself. at 9 years old. And I thought, who would possibly put this in the backpack of a child at this age? And I started to investigate. And I started to see more things and posters and pamphlets and things that were coming from the outside. They were coming from UN agencies. They were coming from donor countries and philanthropic organizations. And as we toured the different countries on the Stay Alive program, I went to Uganda and Kenya, and I found it everywhere. And I'm like, who could do this? Then I went back to the United Nations, and someone proposed comprehensive sexuality education in a negotiation. I thought, I wonder if that's related to what I'm seeing. And I looked it up, and I found that the UN had just published this document on comprehensive sexuality education, these guidelines. And I could not believe it had the logo of all these different UN agencies. It had, first UNESCO was the main publisher, but this document said that children could get sexual pleasure from a person of the same sex, of the opposite sex. It talked about the rights related to, quote, abortion. It had very graphic things that I don't even want to say here. And I was shocked. And that was my journey. And I began studying and helping nations now fight this agenda everywhere, but especially in Africa.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah. So as you follow this conversation, I'm talking to Sharon, and Sharon has earned herself a reputation, and a lot of people don't like her because she tells the truth. When she discovers it, she shares it. And so I think that's very, very profound that you on this journey, you came to Mozambique, and because your church had a program there and with your family, and then good people, you go to an orphanage, you see some children, and you thought, how about adopting those children? And then that began that journey. And 7 years, that must have been a long time. And then you must have done a lot of trips. So, and I'm just seeing how you kind of got immersed into the story of Africa. So people can't tell you that you don't know what's going on in Africa, can they?
No, they can't.
Yeah. How many other countries have you been in Africa?
I don't know. My husband and I were trying to count the other day, and we couldn't figure it out. I think it was around 18 different countries. I can't remember. 18
different African countries. That's amazing. That's amazing. Okay, so you founded Family Watch International out of that amazing experience at the UN, where you realize all you need is just to quote the right documents, and the documents are there. Most people pick them off when they go to those conferences, put them in their bag, and never read them. Exactly. But thank God you read them. So tell us about Family Watch International. What's your mission? What do you seek to accomplish? What's in there?
Well, our mission is to protect the family as a natural and fundamental group unit of society.
Right.
And in order to protect the family, there are a lot of other things you need to work on and protect. To protect the family, you have to protect marriage between a man and a woman, life before as well as after birth, or you won't even have children or families, right, from abortion. Parental rights, that is under assault, the right for parents to guide the education and even the medical services of their children. And then we need to protect national sovereignty, because if nations can't even maintain their own laws to protect the family and to protect marriage and life, then they're going to be overrun, and the family, and that's what's happening in many places, is going to disintegrate and be deconstructed. And so over the last 15 years, though, when I started discovering this agenda for sexualizing children, we realized that the biggest battle is over the hearts and minds of children, because they're after our children.
Okay.
They know that the children will become the future families and leaders of the world. And if they can get the hearts and minds of the children and raise them up in their radical sexual and gender ideologies, then they'll have the politicians, the future teachers, and they will capture the whole culture.
Okay. That's a lot of stuff. One of the things I've discovered, Sharon, is there's a language that a lot of people in church don't understand. Things like radical gender ideologies. Those are very complex terms.
Yes.
And I'm saying, you being in that space, these are things that are the language. But some of you sitting out there, you probably don't understand what some of these ideas portend. What is behind something like radical gender ideology? And I'm going to be asking my guests to break that down for us so that we can have a real conversation. And your pastor there, perhaps you preach your sermon, you keep it nice and tidy. You never touch some of these things because you don't know what's behind the campaigns. And but you have to get into the fight. So one of the aim, in this particular conversation is because we want to bring that church leader, that pastor, that youth leader who, the conversation is everywhere. There are a lot of people talking about this and writing about this, but they miss out on the nitty-gritties. So, you have laid out some of the things that are specifically under attack. Where the problem is sexualization of our children, then parents' rights, and I want you to throw a little bit more light on that, and then national sovereignty, and then of course the actual radical gender. So break that down a little bit for us so that people can get actually to understand what's going on.
A good way to break it down is to talk about the number one tool that they use to destroy the family and affect all of these things.
Yes.
And that again is something called comprehensive sexuality education.
Yes.
And to understand what that is, you have to understand how does the UN define and how do the donor countries define sexuality?
Okay.
Well, if you look at the World Health Organization definition, that's the one that they use. Mm-hmm. And it includes a number of things, but also it includes sexual orientation, gender identity, which is really transgender identity, eroticism, fantasies, desires. So if you're going to have education that's comprehensive about sexuality, mm-hmm. that's what it is. And so we've been analyzing the manuals all throughout Africa, all throughout the world, even in my country, even in the United States. I chair a coalition of people who are fighting it and trying to keep it out of the schools there. Mm-hmm. But we've identified 15 harmful elements that are part of this.
Okay.
And I'll just give you some of them.
Yes.
Number one is it sexualizes children.
Right.
It normalizes sex and condones sex and tells children, like there was one in Kenya called The World Starts With Me. It's funded by the Netherlands and pushed throughout a number of schools. And in it, it tells children that sexuality includes French kissing, that they can engage in anal and oral sex, caressing, mm-hmm. petting, masturbation. And then they teach these children about all these acts. And they tell them that they're okay as long as they don't exchange sexual fluids,
okay.
for infection.
We'll keep it there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we'll keep it there. We will not go back there.
Okay.
Yes, but yes, that's the thing. That's what in this comprehensive sexual education.
Mm-hmm. That's what they're teaching. And then they're confusing them about their gender.
Mm-hmm.
There's a teacher's module for Africa, for the Eastern Southern African region, and it actually says that gender identity means knowing whether someone is male, female, or somewhere in between.
Okay.
As if you could be something other than male or female.
Mm-hmm.
And they also tell teachers that they need to get comfortable talking about homosexuality. They have these concentric circles of sexuality, and they teach children to identify themselves sexually, to come up with a sexual identity, mm-hmm. and about all these different things that are entirely inappropriate for children. Yet this is the training module that the United Nations, UNESCO's logo is right there, UNFPA's logo is on it, and interestingly enough, there's a logo on it from Advocates for Youth. Well, who is that? Advocates for Youth is a U.S. entity of youth, a youth organization that really acts as the extension of an organization called Planned Parenthood Federation of America. Now, I'm going to unpack that because Planned Parenthood Federation of America is the one we're fighting all across the U.S. that's trying to get these radical sexual educations into our schools. Well, they have International Planned Parenthood Federation, which is the mothership, and they have 160 member organizations in all these different countries. Mm-hmm. And the donor countries are funding them and using them in partnership with UN agencies to spread this sexuality education everywhere. So this organization, the youth arm of the Planned Parenthood member organization in my country, in the USA, is writing the teacher's module for all of Africa. Then you have some of the original manuals that were written in some of the African countries, and they were authored by another entity in the US called SECUS, which is the Sexuality Information and Education Council of the United States. Sounds official, but it's an NGO that created itself to look official. And they write some of the worst things that they put in these manuals. And just to give you, like, I'm sorry to tell you this, like, for example, the out-of-school programs is where they really go after the children.
Yes. I think we need to tell our viewers that usually the scheme works in such a way that there is the material that you can have in class in the normal course of learning. And I guess that may be softer.
And they try to push the limit of what they think an African teacher might teach, right?
Yes, so they look at an African teacher where they can go up to here.
Yes.
Then there is the out of school curriculum. It's going to be in the bag of your 9-year-old. So you better actually inspect that bag every time they come home. It doesn't matter which school. It could be an elitist school, great school. You're paying a fortune to keep your child there. It's a great school, but you need to check what is in that bag. So, and you know.
Well, and sometimes it's not in that bag. That's the problem.
Yes.
Like this World Starts With Me, where I forgot to tell you, when it teaches them what sexuality, at the end of it, it says, it's up to you if you want to lose your virginity or not.
Wow.
That's what it tells the children, right? But they use it on a computer after school. So the parents will never see it. There's no trace. The teachers won't see it. So this is very dangerous as well. They've also created, UNFPA has created a phone app called TuneMe, TUNE .me, tuneme.org. And it's for different countries. You can express whether you're Kenya or which country. And it teaches all sorts of things that you would never want your children to learn about sexual orientation, the transgender, abortion rights. I remember it even has a hotline you can call if you need to empty the contents of your uterus.
Oh my goodness.
To empty the contents of your uterus.
You can tell why people don't like my guest here, Sharon Slater. You're just absolutely something, I'm sure. Anyways, but we need to talk about these things. We need to talk about the truth of these programs. So even just those books, manuals, and including
phone
this
apps and computer programs.
Yes. Recently, I just want to digress because, this is so gross. Recently, I saw one of the European countries kind of began to reverse this computerized education. And they said, no, we want to take back the books back to class because they had this idea. I think it's Sweden or one of those countries.
Sweden is one of the biggest countries in pushing this agenda.
So I think then what they discovered is that, among other things, even teaching the lower kids, the drive to digital education, they discovered actually the kids were not really learning as effectively as they thought. The research actually showed that it's probably better to have a physical book. Better. And so books are coming back. And so I think now the conversation is going to be even serious, and parents have to get involved. So that's really what this. I like the organization you're naming. Any other organization that we should be careful about?
Oh,
there are hundreds.
Well, I regret to tell you that Kenya is the hub for all these organizations.
Oh my goodness!
So Planned Parenthood, their African regional entity, is here. I believe I think Marie Stopes, which is the big abortion organization, I think their headquarters moved here.
Yeah.
The United Nations, all of their agencies are involved in this, and they have a big hub here. So Kenya is the epicenter. Also, probably why I got all this negative media is there is an organization or a so-called media entity called Open Democracy, And they were in support of comprehensive sexuality education. They're very leftist. They're funded by the Open Society, ultimately back to George Soros. And the African Open Society, their epicenter, Tambi, is also here in Kenya.
Wow.
And they were really upset. They wrote an article against me and saying I was helping Africans stop the comprehensive sexuality education agenda in various countries. I was the #1 problem. And then they decided that didn't stop me, so they wrote a big attack on me. They said I'm behind all the anti-homosexual laws, that I was the impetus behind Uganda's anti-homosexual law, and Kenya that was brought here, and Nigeria and Ghana, and that I was running around the continent preaching against homosexuality.
Oh my goodness.
And then I'm sure, I don't have evidence, but I'm sure of it in my heart, they triggered a message to all their other media friends throughout the world and said, you go after her. And so immediately I got questions and requests for interviews for the BBC, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, NPR, LA Times, New York Times, The Guardian. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And they just attacked me as this. If you go to Human Rights Campaign, they even have this evil picture of me, the exporter of hate. Our organization's been labeled as a hate organization. And every time someone writes an article, they say, well, known as a hate organization, Family Watch International.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I told you my guest Sharon here, she is one of the, women that we need to be praying for. We need to pray for this, servant of God. She's a prophet in some sense. And she has decided she's going to die on this hill of the family, support the family,
protect children. I can't sleep at night when I know the programs in your countries. In fact, please go see which ones they are. We created a whole website so you can see them for yourselves. If you go to Stop CSE, that stands for Comprehensive Sexuality Education, stopcse.org. We have a documentary. It's 30 minutes. It's called The War on Children. The War on Children, the Comprehensive Sexuality Education Agenda. But then if you click on the tab at the top, it'll say CSE Materials Exposed. And if you click on that, it'll open a page. And there are 2 columns. The first column is the international column. And if you click on the down drop for Africa, you can go to Kenya and you can see some of the ones that were here. You can go by your country. And we'll actually show you the 15 harmful elements that each of these programs have. We score it for you. We give you a link to it. In some cases, we've created slides for it so that you can show people and stop it.
Okay, I'm going to hold you there. We're going to go to a short break. Wonderful. So far, I tell you, whatever you're hearing here is life-changing, life-transforming. We don't want you to miss anything, so keep it here. Take a short break, grab that cup of coffee, and come back to this conversation. Don't go away. Keep it elevated. We're coming back.
Explore a world of knowledge at Elevation Bookshop. Dive into topics like marriage, money, and spiritual growth with our vast reading materials. But that's not all. We are thrilled to introduce new additions like stationeries, notebooks, modeling clay, dictionaries, pencils, kamusi, and more. And calling all students, gear up for success with our back-to-school items, providing you with everything you need to excel in every subject. At Elevation Bookshop, we're here to assist you in finding the perfect resources for your journey. Do you have specific preferences or looking for something special? Visit us at Kenya Cinema Plaza, mezzanine floor, or contact us on 0748 902 225. Elevation Bookshop. Enrich your life. Elevate your brand with Elevate TV, a premier media station in the country. We specialize in video production, live coverage, advertising, and social media marketing. We do quality production for YouTube videos, podcasts, and live events. Transform your vision into reality with creativity and precision. Call us today and elevate your story on 0705 872 237.
Oh, welcome back. This is the Gigi Report. We are having an amazing conversation here. We're talking about promoting and protecting family values and how to fight against some of the operators, actors whose agenda is to destroy the family values as we know it. And before we went to the break, we were talking about some of the organizations and some of the hidden things that are operating in this country, Kenya. Sharon, you're telling us you've literally done a catalog of some of the operators, some of the organizations, some of the materials. Please tell us a little bit more about who is here, who are operating here, what are some of the things that are going on behind the scenes.
Well, I mean, to have all the different UN agencies, to have they're trying to coordinate all their work together, and that hub for all of Africa has moved here. Mm-hmm. Planned Parenthood of the African region, as I mentioned, is here. A lot of the abortion organizations, the Open Society organization, what they do is they fund a lot of women's rights movements, and then they manipulate them towards holding strong pro-abortion positions and trying to change your laws and advancing this whole, actually the whole agenda comes under something called SRHR. If you ever see the words sexual and reproductive health and rights, yes, that's the umbrella. And then we have under that umbrella what we call the triple toxic trio, and they always want to push three things in every program. There's we call it the cockroaches and the ice cream principle, all right, where they offer countries this wonderful program or this lots of aid, and then they carefully insert these cockroaches in that ice cream. And they are comprehensive sexuality education to change the gender and sexual norms of your children, and abortion, and sexual rights. Now, comprehensive sexuality education, when I said it has all these harmful elements, when we say it sexualizes children, we don't care whether it's heterosexual or homosexual, mm-hmm, or bisexual or whatever sexual. Mm-hmm. Any kind of sexualization of children is harmful. Correct. And comprehensive sexuality education will push all of those elements. But I also wanted to point you on that website, besides seeing the curriculum and all the programs, if you click on the toolkit, there's a Defender's Toolkit. It'll equip moms or teachers or even governments with ideas. There's a Stop CSE plan. There's research that shows that all the research that they say that comprehensive sexuality education will solve every world problem: STDs, teen pregnancy, domestic violence, sexual abuse. I mean, there's nothing that they say that comprehensive sexuality education won't solve. Mm-hmm. Well,
including climate change.
Yeah, they do even have a climate change manual. It's crazy, and it's really just comprehensive sexuality education. But we had experts look at all the studies that they said made those cases, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. There was no evidence that comprehensive sexuality education actually prevented teen pregnancy or STDs. And in Africa, the comprehensive sexuality education programs in the schools, it shows increased sexual activity, which should not surprise us when we see the content of what is in there. Yes. Most people think it's only about, helping them delay having sex, but I want to give you one more example because it just shows you, because this is the out of school program in Zimbabwe. It has the logo of the European Commission. It has the logo of Gavi, which is the International Immunization Organization. Mm-hmm. It has UNFPA. I believe it has France, Sweden, Ireland, and 2 other European countries. I can't remember which ones. All their logos are all over it. Mm-hmm. For ages 10 and up. And it says it's about protecting sexual and reproductive health. In it, it's a perfect example how these programs brainwash the children and separate them from their children's values. So what they'll do is they'll tell the parents, we're going to teach your children a values-based education. That they bring the children in and they said, let's analyze where your values came from. Your church, your family, your community. Well, in some churches, they believe masturbation is good, and others they don't. Well, in some churches, they believe that homosexuality is good, in others they don't. And your family may hold values, but you don't have to hold the same values as your parents. You get to choose your own values. And by the way, there's international values that everybody agrees to. They're universal. They're called human rights.
Okay.
And as part of human rights, there's sexual and reproductive health and rights, and there's sexual rights. Then it says to have sexual rights, you have to have sexual knowledge. And here's 20 different kinds of sexual orientations, or patterns they call it. And those, the children have to go study them and report back on 2 of them. This includes bestiality, pedophilia, voyeurism, exhibitionism.
Don't even go through the whole list.
It gets worse. I mean, it is so profane.
Yeah, so profane.
With those logos on it. The European, that's what they're teaching your children. That's what they're exporting to you.
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that bit of the exporting. We're talking about European Union, UN bodies, and this curriculum in Zimbabwe. This is not a story. This is the truth.
You go find it at stopcsc.org. You go find the Zimbabwe manual.
Absolutely.
You can see it.
And so this is absolutely unacceptable. And if you're not angry right now, I invite you to really reflect and re-examine yourself. And so, and you know, while the church was asleep, the Bible says that the enemy, while people were asleep, the enemy came and sowed tares into the wheat field. That is what is happening in Africa. Tares are being sold, and by very, very people and the nations that we have so much respect for, and we actually think we are a great nation. We admire those European nations, you know, and their technology, their great success, and there are so many. So this is absolutely amazing, unacceptable programming. And speaking about importing, so one of the accusations that was leveled against the conference that is ongoing is that a group of white conservative American men, and you happen not to be a man, although you can tell us, apparently it appears, unless you say we don't know. You understand the slang?
Because internationally men are the bad guys, only women matter, so they have to say men came in. Right?
Okay. Is it true that actually the West is indoctrinating, infiltrating, and destroying African values?
Absolutely. But it's not the people who came for this conference. The people who came to this conference are exposing what the West is who's really doing that, right? It's the opposite of what they're saying. We're the ones trying to help and expose and let you fight for your own values once you see it, because it's so deceptive. My government's funding it, so I can see the funding that's coming in and tell you this is what we're doing. This is where USAID has put a lot of its money. This is where the European Union is doing it. This is how the UN funds are going. You may think this wonderful Swedish program where they announced $500 million, their Spotlight program throughout Africa and the Caribbean, it's going to prevent gender-based violence, but how do you prevent gender-based violence? Comprehensive sexuality education. So it's just a cloak for bringing that in. And it's just so funny. It's so ironic that they're saying we're the ones imposing our values when we don't impose anything. We just show you what they're doing. That's it.
All right. There you go. Sharon, I told you she's a prophet, you know, like Elijah, you know, coming to call, you know, to shed the light where there is darkness. So truly, I think the exposure, the people who are actually accusing the so-called far-right conservative American, you know, Christian are coming, infiltrating Africa and lying and you know, imposing their values. Actually, they are.
Can I give you another reason why that story has to go everywhere for them?
Yes.
In all the media, it's all going to stay the same thing. It's because what they do is to change your cultures. In addition to going after your children, they do what's called the whole of society approach.
Okay,
Tell
us about
they
that.
capture your NGOs, or they create new NGOs to infiltrate on the ground in your communities and start to push CSE and the SRHR agenda and all of this. And so they want, when they're trying to get a law passed to legalize abortion, to mandate comprehensive sexuality education, they'll call upon all these organizations that form a coalition, and they'll bring them to Parliament, and then they'll say, look, this is what the people want. This is what the youth of Kenya want. This is what the religious leaders want. They'll even create a religious organization that'll pretend to represent all these faiths, and they'll bring them forward. And by us telling you, for us showing what the agenda is, and if you rise up on the opposite side, it destroys their narrative. So they have to say that we are imposing, like, you would have never come up with the idea that your child should not be sexualized if we didn't come in and tell you that, right? Like, this is a Western value that we're trying to impose on you, to protect your children. It's just insane. But the narrative for them has to be that these white, crazy, far-right conservatives imposed it because the real Africans are rising for sexual and reproductive health and rights, and abortion and comprehensive sexuality education, and the whole LGBT agenda.
It's absolutely crazy. It's absolutely crazy, the kind of things that we are having to deal with. Now, while we are on that imposition and, those evil white American conservative men, no, you're not included because you're not a man. So you get away with that because, if you're a woman, you're not among the evil guys. Anyways, so while we're on that, we've seen a major shift in the U.S. Since the election of Donald Trump, and a shift, and we can see those of us who follow international news, the battle and the shifts that have happened. Tell us about the opportunity for this kind of wind of imposition, and let's call it imposition, because actually the people who are bringing all these agendas, they're actually the ones, especially the gender ideologists, are the ones imposing those foreign values. Is there an opportunity right now in Africa, among nations, among policymakers, to now shift policy, and perhaps what do you think we can do, given what you know?
I think there's a lot that can be done. We just have to be a little bit patient, because if you notice in the news, Trump is a little bit busy with all the Israel and Palestinian issues and the all of his tariffs, and so he has not really built up a lot of the people that he needs to appoint that deal with all of these issues. I know it's very important to him, and I know it's going to come. But if we're a little bit patient, I think we've already seen a big shift on the U.S.'s position at the United Nations. Before, on President Trump, I showed them how comprehensive sexuality education promotes abortion when I was invited to the White House. And they said, done. Then they took a strong position against it always in UN negotiations. Then it shifted to Biden. Now they're the #1 pushers of comprehensive sexuality education. So now, under President Trump, now they're fighting the abortion agenda at the UN. They're speaking out. I was shocked to even say they were against the UN Sustainable Development Goals, because they know what most people don't know, how those deceptive terms that got into those goals, they're not against the actual goals of what they're trying to accomplish. They're against, for example, Goal 5 that calls for sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, which is the banner under which all the agendas come through. So I think we're going to see a big shift. But I also, because I know our time might be running out, I think what's really important for everybody to understand here is there's a big shift here in Africa.
Right.
There's an exciting thing that's happening. That I just came from a conference in Uganda, and it was hosted by the president and the first lady. And there were 22 different members of parliaments from different African countries that came. And they are fed up with this sexual and reproductive health and rights and comprehensive sexuality education agenda and these treaties that get signed that deceptively, there's this Samoa agreement that calls for comprehensive sexuality education that your president signed with all these deceptive provisions. There is an African convention to end violence against women that was just adopted by the heads of state in February at the African Union that has all, again, these tricks and all these things inside of it. Can you believe that that document endorses a strategy called the African strategy to for women's empowerment and gender equality for 2018 to 2028? Well, that sounds great, right? Well, who would look that up? If it's an African strategy, it's probably really good. Do you know that I know the donor countries had to have done this in the EU. They manipulated that strategy. They told everyone, oh, there's just some technical updates. You don't need to look at it. And they changed the definition for sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, a very goal, that's goal 5 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And it's the Europeans' goal in their funding mechanism that all their funds have to support sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights, including comprehensive sexuality education. And anyways, they changed the definition. Do you know what the definition says now? And none of the African states were aware of it, that they were adopting a convention, a binding treaty that endorsed this document that has this definition. I don't know it word for word, but it says something like sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights taken together means the right of choice regarding sexuality and reproduction, and the government's responsibility to provide the means to realize those choices with sexual and reproductive health services and information. Now, that sounds really complicated, but it actually says, and you can't discriminate on that based on bisexual, transgender, lesbian. It has those words in it. No African government would have ever adopted that document had they known that that just brought in the 333. Comprehensive sexuality education, because it's information about sexuality. It's got the LGBT agenda, because it's you can't discriminate in those choices regarding your, remember the definition for sexuality globally, and that includes sexual orientation, gender identity, eroticism, desires, and fantasies. So it's all through these technical things that they now have supposedly locked the whole African continent into these agendas, these 3 agendas, without knowing it. So there is a pushback coming from these parliamentarians. They're actually proposing, and they adopted a draft charter to protect sovereignty, family values, and the family. And it's so exciting. I've never seen so much excitement, enthusiasm. This is will take a process, but we need pastors. We need Muslim imams. We need, Catholic priests. We need all the religious communities that have so much influence and power in African countries to rise up and support this, and all the parliamentarians to join, because this will protect against all these things that have happened. It's going to be written I've seen one of the first drafts, and it's written to even opt Africa out of all the bad things that got deceptively adopted at the UN and everywhere. And I don't know. I'm just very excited about.
Absolutely.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah. So yes, I'm just jumping in actually to reinforce what you're saying, is that the campaign, that the conference, the Uganda conference, which was a few weeks ago, this May, this May just been done, a week before this recording, and it was a coming together of parliamentarians, and some of our Kenyan parliamentarians were that part of that program. And basically is Africa saying, look, we are going to determine definitions in a document called the Africa Charter. So that charter is going to define who the family is, what is
the rights of parents,
parental rights of parents, and including issues to do with the sovereignty, national sovereignty, including the option for African countries to opt out of any international treaty that discriminates or introduces this, kind of gender ideology. So I know I've cut you there, but tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I want to add that it's not just about the issues that Family Watch follows, but it's kind of exciting because there's a section on African food sovereignty, African resources, African education sovereignty, because these are all the areas that have been manipulated and infiltrated. And President Museveni, when he was talking at this conference, he said, in order for this to be successful, we have to become more prosperous. And we have to look inside and look and maybe open up more free trade. And so all these things are being looked upon to see how maybe by divesting ourselves from the dependency of the donors, is what they were saying, that we can actually even become stronger and wealthier and protect our families and our children.
Absolutely. And President Museveni has been very in the forefront. Actually, it has amazed me the kind of things that have been done in Uganda. And remember, Uganda is the pearl of Africa. It's the very center of Africa. Kenya, I know we have a prime place, but when things happen in Uganda, they're going to come to Kenya. So yes, we are very happy that the Ugandan government is leading the way, and you work very closely.
And I did want to say something about that. So
yes.
I've been accused of being behind their anti-homosexual law.
Yes.
I need to be on the record that we were actually not in favor of it. And I had actually spoken openly and publicly to the president, asking him to soften it, because we promote the therapy for people that have struggled with same-sex attraction. Mm-hmm. We want to promote the compassionate approach to these issues, and we felt it was overly harsh. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that the media has made me the one behind it.
While you have poured in so much of your time and energy, you need to try and really just get behind the document.
Focusing on children, the protection of children, the future families of the world, and the greatest assets of Africa. Mm-hmm. You have a crisis going on in Africa because you are starting to follow our countries and the European countries where our population, instead of having a population explosion, mm-hmm. like we heard at the conference today from Kenyan Charles Kanjama, we're having a population implosion where there's not enough people being born to support the growing elderly populations. And Africa right now, your median age is so young. You have a very youthful population, but your older people are still not being supported by enough, because I think your fertility rate has almost dropped in half. And while you're behind us, right? Yeah. But you're still following the same trajectory. Yeah. And you're going to be in trouble like our
I looked
economies.
At those documents. I looked at those documents, and in fact, what surprised us, and some of the people might have missed this, when we did the 2009 census and then did the 2019 census, a lot of people thought that the projection, everybody had been talking about how Kenya is now approaching 60 million. When the numbers were done, in fact, 55 was the number. When the numbers were done in 2019, we were 47 million from 44. Everybody thought we were going to add a whole 10 million. That didn't happen.
Yeah, same with all the doomers that were going to say that the world population was going to explode, and the opposite has happened. It's imploding. In Europe, they're paying people to have babies. In Japan, they're paying people to have babies.
Can they bring the money here?
Well, in Hungary, you don't have to pay taxes the rest of your life if you have 4 children, because they need children. And if you follow the West, you're going to be in the same problem,
Wow. Amazing. Sharon, I'm telling you, can you imagine, we are almost out of time here. One little thing, I want you to think about, what is your message to the church, the Christian communities in our nation, knowing what you know, and what are some of the things that we can do as church communities, given the attack on the family, the comprehensive sexual education, and all those other things that are hidden there, abortion and all that. What do you think we can do?
Well, let me give you several steps.
Yes.
First, go to familywatch.org and subscribe to our free newsletter.
Yes.
Because the more informed you are of what's happening all around the world, and we send out a newswire a couple times a week, you can just read the titles in like 30 seconds and hear and see what's happening on homosexuality, on gender, on comprehensive sexuality education, on abortion, but just important world developments. And sometimes it'll be about Kenya or about your own country.
Yes.
So please get informed, sign up for the Family Watch newsletter. Number 2, warn your parents.
Yes.
Warn your families. Tell them to go out in their communities. Every parent should go and find out exactly who is teaching sex education or sexuality education. They call it family life education. They call it HIV education. Anything related to sex, no matter what the name, they need to go find out and see the manuals. Not listen to any description about what it is, but actually see any manuals that are being used. If it's a computer program, you need to see it. And if it's comprehensive sexuality education, go to stopcsc.org, click on the Stop CSE plan. It'll show you how to get organized and try to get it out of your communities. But also, one of the most critical things that I think religious leaders need to do all throughout Africa, if they're not already organized into an interfaith group, they need to be organized and they need to get briefed on the laws and policies, not just the ones even in your own nation, but the obligations that your governments are signing on internationally and regionally, like this violence treaty. This week, they're adopting the pandemic treaty. And then July 9th is the first opportunity to opt out of something called the amendments to the international health regulations of the World Health Organization. There's the Samoa Treaty. You know, governments need to be pushed by the religious leaders. They need to have the religious voice that's knowledgeable about what's going on. And we can help with that through the newsletter and those things. But if you become the voice, you could do what we can't do in the United States.
Yes.
The religious voice has lost its power in the U.S. Yet in Africa, the religious voice is what carries the day when they stand up. You are the last man standing, says my friend Hank in the Netherlands. He's a good colleague of mine.
Well,
Africa at the United Nations is the last man standing for these values. And it's because of the church. It's because of your religious and cultural values. Please stand up for them. Know what they are. Know when they're under attack and protect them. And you will save the whole world.
Absolutely. That's a very good place for us to wrap up this conversation. Amazing, amazing conversation. There you are. You've heard it from Sharon SLATER, the founder, president of Family Watch International. I tell you what, we can't go beyond that. That's all we had for you. I believe you've heard, you've seen the content. Please follow, look at the links, and make sure you are informed. Don't be caught unawares. And may the Lord bless you. I have been your host, Godfrey Gishoke. This is the Gigi Report. Keep it elevate. We'll see you another day. God bless you. Bye.